Hello and welcome back to another episode of Notion Bonsai, and today we're going to be working on some Azalea bonsai, and I'm just going to be going over some general maintenance and techniques like deadheading, pruning and repotting that you can apply to your Azalea bonsai so that you can just take them that next step further into becoming a great tree. So these are all of the Azalea that we're going to be working on in this video today. We've got a few different types ranging from bigger trees right down to small ones like this where they're more Mame sized bonsai. And they also have a few different colors. These ones are quite nice, vibrant and pink, whereas ones like this one over here have a more of a reddish color to it. And of course all the principles that I show in this video today can be applied to Azaleas of any color. The current month for me is May, which is the month in which most Azaleas tend to flower. Even the term Satsuki Azalea. Satsuki in Japanese means May. If you're new to Azaleas and you're wondering, oh, I don't quite like the pink and I don't like the red, there is hundreds of different types of Azaleas, different varieties, colors, even mixed colors that I have seen on singular flowers where one flower has white stripes through it. So I would say personally, there is definitely an Azalea for everyone. And personally, I love all of the Azaleas. I just think they look so beautiful at this time of year. And one of the things that adds to the beauty of an Azalea to me is the fact that they don't last long. They last only like 3 to 4 weeks during the growing season and then they're gone until the following year. So I really like to appreciate them and look at them when they are here. And a lot of people ask me, Adam, how do you keep your Azaleas healthy for so long? 3 to 4 weeks, that sounds, pretty long. People tell me that they have Azaleas and only after 1 week or 2 the flowers begin to wilt and fall off. I have found if you want to keep your Azalea flower nice and healthy like this, keep them out of the rain and also the direct sunlight. So you can put them in a shaded spot, or even if you have shade netting, just to filter the sun a little bit as it hits the flowers. They won't get scorched as easily. And also if the flowers do get wet, you can come along with a little towel, dry them, that way the rain doesn't break them down. And now before we begin, the tools that we'll be using in this video today are some twig cutters or Satsuki shears, a chopstick, some root pruning shears, branch cutters, a toothbrush. And as always, by no means do you need every single one of these specialized tools. If you're new to bonsai and just getting started, you can get by with just a cheap pair of garden scissors. These are the ones that I used when I got started. Or you could also use a cheap pair of garden secateurs like these ones. Just whatever tools that you have at your disposal and whatever you can use to get the job done. You just want to make sure that whatever tools that you do use are clean and sharp. Clean because we don't want to introduce any bacterial or fungal infections that could infect our trees. So if you just find a pair of tools, give them a little wipe with some hydrogen peroxide. That seems to do the trick for me. And you want the tool to be sharp because a sharp tool will give you a much cleaner cut. And in horticulture, clean cuts heal so much faster and more efficiently than a blunt cut that was squashed by a dull blade. So I'm just going to start off with this little tree and I'm putting it onto a turntable that just lets me see the tree from all angles. And this is probably the most worked on Azalea that you see in this video today. That's why the canopy on top here looks so full. I've been working on this one for maybe just 2 years, maybe 3 years. And this started from a bare garden center piece of material. So in just a few years, you can achieve quite a nice looking tree. Now, whenever I look at the flowers up here, some of them are wilting. So I would like to come and deal with that problem. But if you have a tree in which there is many other flowers that are completely fine, you don't want to go and cut all the flowers off of your tree if the tree is really healthy, because then you're just taking away from the beauty and enjoyment from that tree. If you have a tree on the other hand, its health's kind of suffering, you don't want to put in unnecessary energy into flowers quite yet, then you could come in, deflower the whole tree and let all of the leaves and rest of the tree become healthy in the meantime. Then in later years, you can enjoy the flowers like I'm doing right here. So to remove a flower, it's simply not enough to come in and pluck the flower like this and call it a day at that. As you can see here, there is many stamens still left behind. And at the very base of the stamen is the seed head. So what we need to do now is do what's known as deadheading. And that is simply coming in with some scissors and cutting it right here. There's the seed head and there's the stamen. Taking another look at one of these flowers, and we pluck the flower. Again, it's not enough just to pluck off the petals. You see here's the stamen. And then again, right in here, we're going to cut this off. It has just started raining, so it rains a lot here in Ireland. So if you have an area just to have sheltered while you work on trees, it makes bonsai a lot more enjoyable. Just to demonstrate again, if I pull the flower like this, you've got the stamen and the seed head, and you really want to make sure that you remove the seed head just right down here like that. Alternatively, I've seen other people in bonsai, to remove the seed head, they just use their nail and pinch it like this. That also does the trick. Just personally, I much prefer to come in with the scissors and give it a cleaner cut. And you may be thinking, why on earth would you remove the seed head? Surely you want the tree to produce seeds. That is an option, of course, but the reason why we do this is because when a tree, any flowering tree, begins to produce a fruit, and in that fruit will have the seeds, it is essentially the baby of the tree. So in order for the tree to pass on its DNA and reproduce, the parent is going to want to put so much energy and nutrients into making sure that its DNA is passed on and creates new life. And because of this, if you have a tree that is somewhat unhealthy to begin with and you let it produce fruit and seeds, it can stress the tree out quite a bit. Whereas if we just stop that from happening altogether, we take off the seed head, that energy is then redirected into the foliage and branches of the tree, and all that energy goes into better places we would want it to go when developing a tree. So if we wanted the tree to grow more branches, more leaves, you would definitely want to deadhead them. Take them off like that. And if you have an azalea and you've never deadheaded it before, I highly advise you to try doing it this year, because you will see the health of the tree improve so much more. And of course, deadheading doesn't harm a tree at all. If anything, it benefits it. Some people think, oh, you're cutting off the flowers, that's not very fair on the tree, you're going to harm the tree doesn't like it. I can assure you 100% it will help the tree more than harm it. So I've just taken off the nasty looking flowers, the ones that were wilting, and I've just noticed on the front of this there is a seed head without any flowers on it. And as it comes into the month of June, you will notice most of your azaleas will look like this. The petals will have wilted off and fallen off, and you'll have lots of these little seed heads all over the tree. You really have to go in and inspect them, because you may think, oh, there's no more flower petals there anymore, the tree should be fine, but you will find lots of seed heads like this. So again, we want to come in, just cut them off. So let's switch over from this tree to a tree that looks much more like this. This one, as you can see, there's some nice flowers on the top. There's some wilting flowers on the side that got wet. Again, going right into the seed head and deadheading it. With this particular tree, I'm going to deflower the lot because there's so much going on here. And for me to efficiently prune the branches in the way that I want, I really want to see what's going on. And at the moment, the flowers are preventing that. This is probably one of my most favorite parts when working with azaleas, because I find just sitting and cutting the flowers is an excellent mindfulness exercise. Very good for your mental health. Just to clean this up, you want to take out any weeds that's beginning to grow at the base of your trees. This part's quite important because if weeds are allowed to grow, some of the roots could get entangled with the roots of your bonsai, and it could cause a lot of problems later down the line. So as you see weeds growing on your trees, just get them early. Now just taking the toothbrush, I like to clean up the bottom of the trunk of the tree. This just makes sure no algae is able to form at the base. This didn't have much on it, so that's all I'm going to do there. When it comes to pruning azalea, there are a few things and guidelines we can keep in mind. Generally, we want the branches to bifurcate. So that is when the branch comes along, at the end it splits into two branches, and then again they go along and split into two branches, and then again in two and two. But azalea's growth habit tends to be at the ends of the branches they grow maybe 3 or even 5 different branches. So we will come in and select them, but you also have to ask yourself the question, how tall do I want this tree to be? If I wanted this tree to be an extremely bigger bonsai with a big thick trunk and a bigger pot, I wouldn't prune this tree at all. I would just let it grow, let all these branches get thicker, and in turn that would thicken the trunk line of the tree. But in my case today, I don't want this tree to get any thicker. I'm quite happy with how this tree is. It's quite unconventional for a bonsai to have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 different main trunks on the tree. But personally, I really like the style of this one. And because of that, I don't want this tree to get any bigger. In fact, I want this tree to be a little shorter, maybe around this height. So what I'm going to do is come in and just chop it down to the desired height that I want. You really don't need to be afraid of pruning azalea because they do backbud really well from bare wood. I'm just going to prune this back quite short. Even on this side, I can take them right in. More or less doing a profile cut to start with before I begin branch selecting. I'd like to be even smaller with this. So that is roughly around the size that I'd like this tree to be. I'm also going to remove these yellow leaves that's hanging down because they're going to fall off anyway. They're turning yellow because they're not getting any light because they were on the underside of all the foliage that was on top here. And now we can do some branch selection. And as you can see already, this branch is crossing over the trunk line. It's immediately sticking out to me, so I'm going to remove that altogether. If you wanted to, you could shorten it to here, but just to make this a little bit more sparse, I'm going to cut it right into there because there's already a lot going on here. This branch is crossing over here. I'm going to get rid of that. There's quite a lot going on in this area and I'd like to show off the trunk line, so for that reason I'm going to cut this off. That's so much better. And I'm just going to clean up this cut with some branch cutters. That way it's a lot cleaner. Looking over at this section of the tree, as you can see, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 branches coming from the one spot. And I would like to reduce this down to 2 where it bifurcates. So first I'm going to remove this quite thick one because I do want the branch to go from thick to thin and bifurcate. And then as you can see here, this one is quite long. And right now with this tree, the whole purpose of pruning is to try and get the tree as small as possible. So for that reason, I'm going to keep the 2 shoots that have the smallest length. That way, by pruning and selective pruning like that, we naturally keep the tree smaller. There doesn't seem to be any other glaring problems like that where there's many branches coming from the one spot of the tree. There's just one little thing I like to fix, and that is just to shorten this branch back. Maybe I can shorten it to here. That way it just balances the tree on that side. And I think now it's got a really nice overall shape. It is quite drastic what we did to this tree today. Oftentimes in bonsai, trees do look worse before they look better. And this is the case with this tree. We have taken quite a lot of foliage off of it, but by doing this, we'll encourage the tree to backbud further down here. It will get more dense and ramified. And even at this right now, I think the tree is a lot more proportional in relation to the thickness of the trunk and the height of the tree. And this is essentially a first styling for this little azalea. In the next coming years, this tree will only look better and better. Now moving on to this little azalea. As it is right now, these flowers are looking quite beautiful, so I am going to keep these on the tree until the time comes where it needs pruning. But whenever I do prune this, I'm going to prune this quite harshly down to here and maybe back to here, just to keep this as a little Mame sized tree. Let's look at this tree. As you can see, this was once a really thick azalea, and I cut off the main trunk of the tree and allowed a side branch to become the new leader. And again, azaleas are really resistant. This didn't have any problems with what I did. It's even pushing out flowers. It's got lots of healthy green leaves all over. I'm just going to clean up a little bit of algae at the base of this tree. So again, just taking a toothbrush and scrubbing at this. And you may be looking at this soil and thinking, Adam, why is it you have this in a mix of pumice, akadama, lava rock, and zeolite, and not in something like ericaceous compost or Kanuma soil that has more acidic properties? Of course, if you wish to, you can place your azalea into this, but I am doing a little bit of experimenting with just pumice, akadama, lava rock, and zeolite mixture, and then adding things into this soil mix to make it more acidic by using things like specific azalea fertilizers and things that add more acidity levels to the soil. And honestly, I have found the trees do quite well in this. I think it's quite important to experiment in bonsai to find out what works for you. And that's why this one's in here. It's more of a learning process for me also. Moving on to this tree, as you can see, it has lots of beautiful flowers all over it, but just something looks off about this tree, and it is the fact that there's this gap in the middle. I thought that this would fill out in time, and through time, maybe I could wire this here, make it fill out in relation to the thickness of the trunk line. I just don't feel that this tree matches that sort of long, slender elegance to it that you would see in a nice, tall, elegant maple. I just don't think it matches the azalea because the flowers, whenever they bloom, they add a visual weight to the top of the tree, and it makes it look kind of heavy, and then it makes the bottom part of the tree look unstable, where it's like, what the heck is going on up here? If that makes sense, please let me know in the comments. But for them reasons, I want to take the height of this tree down quite significantly. So we're gonna go maybe to here with it, even here with this one, and just bring the height of the tree down. That way Now it's a lot more in proportion. This one at the front here seems a little bit weird to me, growing on top of the trunk line. So let's cut that. And then again, clean it up with the branch cutters. A lot of drastic work today, but it really has to be done to get a nice tree in the end. We could even shorten all of this. I really feel like this gap is a little too big, and the twin trunk thing maybe could look like that if I wired it together. Even then, it still looks weird to me. I think I'm even gonna just reduce this tree down to one trunk. Now the question is, which trunk do we keep? I could remove this one, have that as the bonsai, and we really are starting from scratch when we do this. Maybe remove this one, have that as the bonsai, much thinner. The other problem could also be the fact that the two trunks are the same height. It kind of looks like a tuning fork. Maybe if we reduce one of them in height first, this would be the one I'd remove anyway. Now it could look maybe a little bit more interesting. Nah, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna take it off because eventually I'll probably take it off anyway, and I won't like just keeping it on there because it will always annoy me. And I really want to make sure that this cut is flush. And I find with azaleas, whenever they heal, they don't tend to roll over like a maple would. Instead, they just sort of turn brown and stop, like this one has here higher up on the tree. So let's try and get this nice and flush. I think that looks quite good there, but because this is such a big cut, I'm gonna get some cut putty on this. And this cut putty just helps prevent moisture from escaping from the tree, and that way the tree can recover much faster from this cut. Now this tree is from a clump of bonsai that we separated in a video last year. It was just this bush that I got from a garden centre for fairly cheap. Pulled them all apart, and this was actually stuck into a bonsai pot at the time. But earlier in the year, this spring, I took it out of that little bonsai training pot and I up-potted it into this pond basket. And with this tree, I don't want to keep it small. This tree is going to be incrementally up-potted and up-potted year after year, or even every 2 years as this tree begins to fill the pot. For that reason, I'm not going to prune this tree today. I'm not going to be pruning any of the branches. I just want to let this tree have all the branches that it's produced and let all of them branches get to work on thickening the trunk, because I would like the trunk of this one to get fairly thick so that we can have a tree that's maybe this height in the future with a trunk maybe that thick. And to get that, I will need to let this grow even taller just to get a good thick trunk on it. But for now, all I'm going to do is deadhead it. If you're looking to know when the most absolute best time to prune azalea is, I have found just after flowering is a great time to prune them, because you get to enjoy the flowers. Alternatively, you could prune them in early spring, but you wouldn't be able to enjoy the flowers of the azalea that year. Now these three Mame azalea have been rooted from cuttings last year, but as they are right now, they're beginning to get a little bit too big. I would like to enjoy the flowers on these little ones just a little bit longer because they're just so beautiful. Look at that. But if I were to prune them, I would prune them right back to like here, even right back to here, so that next year or even in this current season, it will back bud and we'll get a lot more growth from there. With this little one here, I would do the same, maybe even cut it right back to here. I'm gonna prune this one, prune it back to here, just to take it back to something like this. Even then, you could take it shorter. You go right down to there with it, like that. That's maybe a little bit more proportional for the thickness of the trunk. That way we can keep this tree nice and small. This tree has been in this pot now for about 2 years. It hasn't been repotted in some time, and as you can see, it's already filled the pot. So this is in definite need of a repot. And I'm also going to repot this little cutting that it came from, just to improve the overall health of this tree, because as you can see, for being a year in this pot, it really hasn't put on much healthy growth. It's looking kind of bare, and it's got a few little flowers here and there, so it could do with a little upgrade. When it comes to repotting azalea, I find the best time in the UK to repot them is early spring, like late February. But if you do research online, you will find there is 2 good times to repot azalea, and online will tell you early spring and after the trees have finished flowering. Personally, I don't think that if you're in the UK and you repot after the trees are flowering, I don't think it's such a good idea. I think it's much better to repot in early spring. You see, the reason why a lot of places tell you that you can repot after the trees finished flowering is because they do this in Japan, and around this time in Japan is when the monsoon season comes in, and during that time it's totally okay to repot for them because as it's raining a lot, it's super humid everywhere and hot, so the trees have a really nice growing conditions to grow in. But if you repot after it's flowered in the UK and the temperatures rise and it gets a little bit dry and it's not as humid, it can be a little bit risky for the trees. I'm going to be repotting these trees today because I know I can protect them, and here in Ireland it rains a lot, so it's kind of like the Japanese monsoon season. And I'm just going to start by just loosening up some of this old soil, and I find when repotting azaleas, it makes your job so much easier if you let the soil dry out a little. It tends to fall away so much easier than if it's wet and soggy. So I'm just taking the chopstick and raking outward from the center of the trunk. All I want to do here is loosen up the old soil. I don't want to tear through many roots, so I'm just working in jabbing motions like this. If I'd left this tree for another year or two, the soil might have become too compact, and then as a result the health of the tree would start to suffer. I'm just turning the tree upside down now. Again, I'm raking outward from the center. As you can see from this root ball, I have raked away quite a lot of the old soil, and the roots on azalea are quite like spiderweb. They're very fine and fibrous. I've loosened up as much soil that I'm comfortable removing before putting risk to the health of this tree. I've just made it nice and aerated and loose underneath so that the new soil can work its way into the root ball and none of the root ball becomes too compact over time. And the pot that I'll be putting this into is, of course, a healthy pond basket. This will ensure lots of oxygen gets to the roots and the tree will thrive. So the soil mix that I'm using this year for my azaleas, so this is just a mix of fine grit, pumice, akadama and lava rock. I think I have a little bit too much in here to sieve, but I'm sieving it to remove any of the fine particles that's in the soil. And these fine particles, you can see them gathering down here. It's like dust. These tend to clog up and give you a really poor drainage if you keep them in your soil. And now is the time I would usually add some ericaceous compost to this mix. But instead, this year what I'm going to do, just to retain moisture in the soil, is to add some of this sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss has many benefits for trees. It's antifungal, antibacterial. I'm just cutting it up, that way there's no long strands of sphagnum that can get tangled in the roots. When we repot this next time, the sphagnum will be so much easier to remove if it's cut up. So I've got the sphagnum nice and mixed through the soil. Now I'm just going to make a little mountain in the middle, and then on top of that, I'm going to put the azalea, and I'm just going to squeeze it down nice and firmly. And by making a mountain like this, just ensures that there's no air gaps underneath the tree, because anywhere that there's air gaps in a planting like this is essentially areas in which water can't reach. And if water can't reach an area, then roots won't grow there. So we want to eliminate all the air gaps. Now, just to secure this tree in place, if you wish to, you could use wire, run it up through the bottom of the pot and hold it in place that way. Personally, with these pond baskets, I really like to take use of the holes in the sides. So what I'm going to do is just take 2 bamboo chopsticks. I'm going to put them through the pond basket and across the root ball, and that way it's going to hold it in place. So I'm just putting this through like this. And then again on this other side, I'm just pushing the bamboo chopstick across. And now this tree is definitely not going to fall out. And then with the chopstick, we're going to try and work out all the other air gaps that may be in the soil. As you can see here, as you work this down, you can get more soil into the air gaps below. And I really think this tree is going to thrive in this over the next few years, because there's just so much oxygen is going to get into them roots, and they're going to have a really nice growing condition to grow into. I just went ahead and repotted the other tree. Now with this one, we potted it into a bigger pot in order to get the tree thicker and taller. But with this one, I downsized it into, again, that same bonsai soil mix with the sphagnum moss. My goal here is just to get this tree healthy, but keep it small. But all that's left to do now is give these trees a water. And there you guys have it. On that, I'm going to end off this video right here. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like on this video. It really helps out the channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And please let me know what you guys thought of this video down in the comments below. I'm always open to new and different ideas in bonsai. If you would like to support me and the things that I do on this channel, hit the thanks button down below. Or if you'd like to become a channel member, hit the join button. That way you'll get early access to new videos before they go out to everyone else. And you also get access to membership posts. If you'd like to keep up to date with things that I do off camera, please follow me on Instagram. It's at Notion Bonsai, and you can see all the things that I do on there. But on that, thank you so very much for watching.